What's up everyone, welcome to the channel, The Hodl Fandom. My name is Brad, and this is where we connect the Veve NFTs to the legacy and the stories behind them. Today, we're going to take a look at House of X issue number 1, released by Veve in premium digital format. So, let's get into it. This comic was written by legendary writer Jonathan Hickman. He has written some of the most epic stories with Marvel, involving the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the New Avengers, Secret Wars, and more recently in 2019, House of X, Powers of X, Dawn of X, and X of Swords. For purposes of this conversation, we are focusing on House of X issue number 1, since that is the specific comic NFT that Veve has released. But I will touch upon Powers of X, as they are related to the overarching and intertwined stories. House of X is a 6-issue storyline, meaning there are 6 parts to complete this segment of the story, sort of. It's a bit complicated, and I'll explain what I mean later, but for now, just know that House of X is comprised of 6 issues, and what Veve users have access to as an NFT is just issue number 1. In my opinion, this is one of the best stories to come out of the X-Men universe in the past several years. So if you're only going to read one comic book, one recent story, I would definitely recommend this one. This is also a soft reboot of the traditional X-Men, which is a bit different from what many of you guys are familiar with in the older comics or the X-Men animated series. So you don't need to necessarily read any prerequisite comics before jumping in, but there is some history and some interesting things to know, and I will fill you in. For those that don't want to or haven't read the Veve NFT on their app, let me do a quick summary of the issue, highlighting and explaining some key points. There is a 2-page prelude which actually shows kind of a creepy image of Professor X wearing like a new slim-fitting version of Cerebro and hatching what looks like to be Cyclops and other X-Men. This won't make sense right now, and still won't until you go beyond issue number 1. Since you folks have me, I'll let you know what this all means by the end of the video, and also explain why Xavier is able to walk here, because those two things are very much tied into each other. I'll elaborate more on that later. So the main story starts off showing the X-Men planting flowers around the world over the past 5 months, as well as on the moon and even in the Savage Land, which is in comics a prehistoric land in Marvel Comics located in Antarctica. We then skip to Jerusalem, where 3 ambassadors are talking to Sophie and Esme of the Stepford Cuckoos, who are essentially clones of Emma Frost through the Weapons X program in another storyline. The ambassadors are looking to have a diplomatic meeting with Xavier, but instead of Xavier showing up, Magneto shows up. Jonathan Hickman does a great job of writing Magneto as a total boss, not to be messed with, and the artwork does a great job of emphasizing that. Hickman then explains what those flowers the X-Men were planting are all about. The flowers produce 3 different drugs for humans and has 3 different purposes for mutants. For humans, the flowers produce a drug that extends human life for 5 years, produces a universal antibiotic, and cures all the diseases of the mind. On the other hand, for mutants, it produces gateways that work like a wormhole that can transport people to and from another place, produces a self-sustaining environment like what we see here in Jerusalem, and it can grow into a habitat that Krakoa doesn't know about. So what is Krakoa and how does it know about things? Well, here's some background information. Krakoa is actually a living island in the Marvel universe. And in this story, it's where all the mutants have made their home to escape the persecution from humanity. They are also trying to make it a sovereign nation. It's located in the Pacific Ocean, where after several nuclear bomb tests, it's believed to have caused the ecosystem to develop a single hive mind. The island was first introduced in Giant-Size X-Men, where the original X-Men team of Jean Grey, Cyclops, Angel, and Iceman were captured on the island of Krakoa. So Professor X formed a new team, Nightcrawler, Colossus, Wolverine, Banshee, and Sunfire, to rescue them. So they were successful, and both teams merged into the full X-Men team many of us know today. So back to the story, we learn a couple quick things here. Krakoa only allows mutants to travel through the portal or a human with a mutant escort. And we see here Cypher, who is a mutant whose power is to understand any language, is in communication with Krakoa. He's the only one who can do so and helps track the mutants traveling through the portals. We also get the introduction of 2 organizations. The first one is Orchis. It is comprised of assets from other organizations such as AIM, SHIELD, Strike, Sword, Alpha Flight, Hammer, Armor, and Hydra. their existence is based on what Jonathan Hickman calls the Cro-Magnon problem, which is basically that the human population will overtake that of humans in 20 years. Hickman also references the Genosha genocide. In the comics, this is part of the E is for Extinction story arc where Cassandra Nova takes control of wild sentinels and massacres the island of Genosha, killing 60 million mutants. If it were not for this event, mutants would have overtaken the human population in 10 years, but the genocide extended this estimate an additional 10 years. We can also see the Orcus base, which will later be known as Orcus Forge, is on a mother mold head located near the sun. Some people may think this is a master mold head, and it's not revealed here, but this is not a master mold head like in the X-Men animated series. This is a mother mold, which creates other master molds. We're also introduced to Damage Control, which is an organization that catalogs information for all superheroes around the world. This includes information from Iron Man and Reed Richards taken out of their control. Earlier in the comics, Stark and Richards were presumed dead and went missing, so that is how Damage Control got their information. And this is where we pick up with Mystique, Sabretooth, and Toad stealing information from Damage Control for purposes to be revealed later. And during this heist, Sabretooth is not able to escape through the portal and is captured by the Fantastic Four. Cyclops enters through the portal, and while things seem friendly, as Cyclops tries to negotiate for Sabretooth's freedom in the name of amnesty, Reed Richards denies him that. For a split second, you think things are about to get violent. You see hands and fists and a little shimmer of light in Cyclops' visor that makes you think just for a second a fight is going to start. But cooler heads prevail and Cyclops lets the Fantastic Four keep Sabretooth for now. Before we get into the last scene, Jonathan Hickman likes to put charts in his work, and he does a pretty good job here of putting a chart that explains what an Omega level mutant actually is. The key takeaway to note here is that for a mutant to be Omega level, the upper limit of their power is undefined. It's also worth noting that finally Storm is classified as Omega, and there's also Franklin Richards, who is the son of Reed Richards and Susan Storm. He is just a kid, but he just might be the most powerful mutant in existence. I can talk for a while on how powerful he really is, but I'll just give you one example. As a kid, he created a universe in his bedroom. It wasn't claws coming out of his hands. It wasn't laser beams shooting out of his eyes to make a hole in a wall. It was creating a whole universe. Yeah, that's powerful. So anyways, back to the story and the final scene in issue number 1. The Stepford Cuckoos, who are giving the tour to the ambassadors. As I mentioned earlier, they're clones of Emma Frost. And since Emma Frost is one of the most powerful telepaths out there, as a result, Sophie and Esme also have telepathic abilities. And they're able to read the true intentions of the ambassadors. And they're not genuine, of course. They each have their own agenda, and some have their hidden identities as well, such as this ex-SHIELD agent who is revealed to be armed and Magneto just quickly disarms him. It's then revealed the purpose of why they're here in Jerusalem. They were summoned by Magneto, not to negotiate, but to convey a message to humans. A symbolic message that humans have new gods now. So that was my clip notes of issue number 1, including some background information for those who don't read comics and wanted to learn a little bit more about it. Keep in mind, this is one of 6 issues for House of X. In fact, what's kind of weird with this is the reading order is kind of intertwined with Powers of X. So you don't read House of X consecutively from issues 1 to 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You read House of X issue number 1, then Powers of X issue number 1, House of X issue number 2, then Powers of X issue number 2, and so forth. So the full story is the combination of these two, and then you proceed to Dawn of X and X of Swords to complete the overall story arc as it stands today. I'm going to touch on some key highlights that are to come, so this might be a bit spoilery, but I want to mention them just to highlight the great story that Jonathan Hickman has brought us, as they also change and build on the previously established X-Men universe. Firstly, I want to talk about Moira McTaggart, an OG character from the comics who is a human geneticist and always helps out Xavier and the X-Men. Well, she's finally revealed to actually be a mutant for the first time ever, with the ability to live many lives. She lives so far a total of 10 lives, died and been reincarnated 10 times, each time remembering the prior lives. When Xavier meets Moira for the first time in this story, he reads her mind. He sees the future that awaits. Despite her best efforts, she cannot stop the inevitable war with humans versus mutants. And this is the catalyst to why Xavier has taken drastic measures to unite mutant kind and relocate them to Krakoa. It's another attempt to stop this war and the destruction of his race. You also get the return of Nimrod, the super powerful sentinel, super advanced sentinel, originally from Days of Future Past, and he's returned and is leading the war versus the mutants. We also get the allegiance with my favorite X-Men villain, Apocalypse. That's Apocalypse in the comics, not the movie. I'm sorry, that movie was terrible. It was a terrible follow-up to Days of Future Past. Listen, Oscar Isaac is a great actor, but that was a horribly written and portrayal of the villain Apocalypse. Finally, we see the death of all the X-Men. Angel, Mystique, Nightcrawler, Wolverine, Cyclops, all of them. While Hickman writes deaths in an amazing way, after this, though, Jonathan Hickman changes how deaths work with mutants. There is a mechanism that allows Xavier to resurrect any X-Men, similar to how you can back up and restore a hard drive. I like what Jonathan Hickman does here. You can see in the past, deaths were used to shake things up. Many characters would die just to come back a little while later. Nothing truly dies in comics. And as the story goes on to Dawn of X and X of Swords, Hickman removes deaths and any serious injury as a plot point for shock value, allowing the readers to focus on the story for what it is and not a quick death to subvert our expectations. We can now look back to the first 2 pages. And you know how I said things looked weird there with Xavier and it wouldn't make sense until you finish or go beyond issue number 1? With what I just said, those pods are Xavier, birthing X-Men that have been backed up. Also, I touched on Xavier walking. Well, through the same mechanism, he's able to walk again. You see, Xavier's paralysis has also been an ongoing plot point, being paralyzed and cured over and over again. Hickman takes those plot mechanisms out and allows readers to focus on the story writing, and is one of the reasons why he is a legend in my books. Let's quickly touch on the value of the NFT as I see it. As a fan, I think the comic itself is a great story and will be held with such titles as Days of Future Past and Age of Apocalypse. As an investment right now, I don't see it being the best collectible to appreciate in value, although there are some catalysts that can quickly change that. I think comic fans really love this story arc, so if there are events that will bring Veve an influx of new users who are more fans than crypto people, that demand will go up, thus the price would increase. If Veve comic books are allowed to be taken off the app and listed on OpenSea, I see the whole value of this comic and comics in general skyrocketing. We also know that Disney has yet to introduce mutants in their cinematic universe. We don't know if they'll pull ideas from Chris Claremont's X-Men or from the Fox X universe. However, if they pull from this new Jonathan Hickman story, it may increase exposure and demand for this comic and NFTs related to it. In terms of future-related comic book NFTs, I'd like to see the whole House of X issues, the remaining 2 to 6 being released, as well as Powers of X 1 to 6, since the stories are very much intertwined. Anyways, that's the story behind House of X issue number 1, and I hope it's helped you connect your NFT to the fandom. Thanks for watching, please consider liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video.